I've been a night shift nurse for 2 years. I work at a small community hospital. It feels quiet most nights, just me, the patients, and the dim lights. I took this job after my husband passed away. It gives me stability for my 2 kids. I've never stopped wanting to help others, even in this unsettling place. A couple of nights ago, I walked the endless corridors. Room 214 called me. Inside, a patient needed medication. I did my routine, then opened the door. The lights were low. I looked around, listening carefully. That's when I heard the whispers. They were soft but clear. "Help us," I thought they said. I shook my head. Maybe it was just my tired mind. As I went about my work, I couldn't shake the feeling. I felt a chill but convinced myself it was nothing. I was just stressed. The night dragged on like usual. I went back to the supply room, trying to shake off the unease. But when I returned, I heard the whispers again. This time, they felt more urgent. I stopped outside room 214 again. I hesitated. The lights flickered above me, like they were trying to get my attention. I glanced to the nursing station. For a split second, I thought I saw a shadow move. My heart raced. I didn't know if I was paranoid or if something was really lurking. Later that night, I found an old patient chart. The names inside were strange. I felt the unease grow. The whispers grew more distinct, more personal. Each time I neared room 214, something pulled at me. I was too tired, I thought. I had to focus on my work. On my last night of that week, everything changed. The whispers morphed into frantic cries. Help us, the hospital buzzed with a strange energy. I glanced back at the door. The handle moved slightly, like someone was trying to get out. I felt my heart pounding. I wanted to run, but something drew me closer. Then I heard it clearly. "Why won't you help us?" I froze. Cold sweat trickled down my back. I took a deep breath. My instincts screamed to turn away, but I felt the weight of something pressing against that door. I stepped closer, needing to know what was on the other side. When I finally looked again, I saw movement behind the door. A shadow shifted just beyond the glass. My stomach dropped. It shouldn't have been there. Fear shot through me. I remembered how I wished to help others. But who or what was asking for help? I put my trembling hand on the door. Should I open it? Should I turn away? My breath quickened as I stood there, frozen in time. Whatever was waiting behind that door was not supposed to be there. I knew I had to open it. I took a shaky breath and turned the handle of the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The door creaked open slowly, and I felt a rush of cold air hit my face, making me shiver. The room was dark, barely illuminated by the dim hallway light. As my eyes adjusted, I saw the bed empty. The sheets were neatly tucked in, but the air felt thick, heavy with an unsettling tension. "Hello?" I called out, trying to break the silence, but my voice sounded distant, almost swallowed by the darkness. I stepped inside, leaving the door ajar behind me. I scanned the room, expecting to find something, anything, that might ease my growing fear. But there was nothing, no patient, no signs of struggle, just the chill that wrapped around me like a shroud. Suddenly, a noise caught my attention. A soft rustle came from the corner of the room. I whipped my head around, heart racing anew. I felt that familiar pull, the same energy that had haunted me over the last few weeks. "Help us," echoed in my mind like an urgent prayer. I hesitated, my instincts at war. Should I stay and confront the source of those words or retreat before it was too late? I summoned the courage to step closer to the corner. That's when I noticed something on the floor, papers scattered, some torn and faded. I knelt down and picked them up, squinting at the faint printing. It was another patient chart, but this one was dated years ago. The ink was smudged, but I could make out a name, Daniel Hayes. I gasped softly as I recognized it. I had seen that name in the previous patient chart. But how? I thought it was just a coincidence until I realized this chart held deeper secrets. I swept my flashlight over the pages and read a line that froze me in place. Admitted for unexplained phenomena. I felt a chill creep down my spine, every instinct urging me to leave the room. But I was drawn to the mystery, against my better judgment. I flipped the pages quickly and spotted a note in the margin, voices heard. Seeking help. Then, I heard it again, the whispers. They floated through the air like a soft breeze, and I could almost make out words. Find us. I looked around, panic rising. The door had closed softly behind me. I was trapped in this room, the whispers growing more insistent, desperate. My heart raced as I turned around, facing the wall opposite me. That S when I saw it, an outline, a figure slowly materializing in the shadows, flickering like a candle. I barely breathed. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Help us, came a voice, clearer now and undeniably close. I couldn't make out the features, but I sensed it was searching, yearning for something lost. With no time to think, I dropped the papers and lunged for the door. I yanked it open and stumbled back into the hallway, my heart hammering. The whispers faded but echoed in my mind, mingling with my fears. But what had just happened? I had to find out more about Daniel Hayes. Something told me this was just the beginning. The hospital had its secrets. And I couldn't ignore the call for help any longer. As I caught my breath, I felt the weight of the mystery pressing in, darker and deeper than I had ever imagined. I couldn't shake the image from my mind as I rushed back down the dim hallway. The whispering voice lingered, echoing in my head like a warning. Help us. It was unsettling, but it also ignited a fire of curiosity. What had I stumbled into? I needed more information about Daniel Hayes. I reached the nurses' station, breathless and jittery. A few nurses were gathered, chatting about mundane things, unaware of the turmoil I just faced. I took a moment to collect myself, leaning against the counter. Hey, do you guys know anything about a patient named Daniel Hayes? One of the nurses, an older woman with tired eyes, glanced at me with a hint of recognition. Hayes. Yeah, he was here a long time ago, one of those cases that stuck with you. Strange kid. No one believed him. What do you mean strange? My heart raced with anticipation. She hesitated, glancing at her colleagues. Just stories. You know how it is in hospitals. He talked about voices, shadows. They thought he was delusional. Ended up being discharged after a few months. Discharged? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Did he ever come back? She shook her head slowly. No, not that I know of. But the whispers, her voice trailed off, and her gaze shifted to the floor. Whispers. I pressed, feeling that familiar tug at my curiosity. Look, whatever happened to him, it wasn't normal. Some nights, the staff swore they heard someone calling for help in the empty rooms. She shivered slightly, as if she were recalling something chilling. I'd stay far away from those memories if I were you. Just then, the station's monitor beeped loudly, cutting our conversation short. I could feel the tension in the air shift. The moment vanished, and the nurses returned to their duties. I felt an urgent need to investigate, but I didn't know where to start. With a determined breath, I moved away from the nurses' station and headed toward the archives. If I wanted answers, I needed to dig deeper. The archives were tucked away at the far end of the hospital, a place seldom visited during the night shift. As I made my way down the corridor, the fluorescent lights flickered above me. I ignored the unsettling feeling creeping back. I had to know. The heavy door to the archives creaked open, revealing a small room filled with shelves of dusty files and old records. I switched on a lamp, its light struggling against the shadows. I began sifting through documents, looking for anything related to Daniel Hayes. Hours could have passed, or maybe just minutes, as the urgency grew. That's when I found a yellowed file tucked at the back, labeled Daniel Hayes Case Study. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were detailed notes describing his stay, bizarre occurrences, and comments from staff who believed he was touched by something. Then I noticed something scrawled in the margins: check the basement for answers. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I slowly closed the file, my heart pounding. The basement? Why had no one mentioned that before? Then, the lights flickered again, and the whispers returned, clearer now, echoing around me. Find us. Fear shot through me, but I felt an urgent pull. I had to understand. Whatever was down there might hold the key. A new determination ignited within me. I was not finished yet. I stepped out of the archives, my heart racing. The basement loomed in my mind, a dark abyss waiting for my curiosity. I took a deep breath, fighting back the unease creeping in. I needed a flashlight from the supply room first. It was time for a true investigation. The hallway felt longer now, each step echoing against the sterile walls. My skin prickled with anticipation, and the lingering whispers taunted me, urging me forward. Help us, they echoed faintly, grounding me in my purpose. I quickened my pace. Reaching the supply room, I rummaged through the clutter until I found a flashlight. I switched it on and pointed the beam into the dark corners, revealing cobwebs hanging like ghostly souvenirs. With the flashlight in hand, I made my way to the basement stairs. Descending the stairs, the air became heavier. The light cast eerie shadows that danced on the walls, twisting into shapes that made my heart race. I could hear a faint hum, almost like distant voices merging into one. My pulse quickened. The whispers were closer now, teasing at the edge of my understanding. Help us. Find us. The basement door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a vast, dim space filled with old, forgotten equipment and the remnants of a time long gone. Dust motes floated in a narrow beam of light. I felt a chill slide down my spine, but I had come too far to turn back now. I ventured further into the basement, the whispers growing louder and more insistent. Here, over here, they beckoned, and I followed the sound, my flashlight flickering slightly as if in response to the tension of the moment. That's when I saw it. A battered old gurney lay against the wall, covered in a tattered sheet. The whispers intensified, rising into a cacophony that swirled around me. I approached it cautiously, my hand tremoring against the metal frame. Before I could think twice, I pulled the sheet back. What I found froze me in my tracks. Written in red ink across a faded medical record was the name Daniel Hayes. Below it, scrawled in a shaky hand, was a rambling note: they're inside. You have to help them. They won't let me go. What the hell? I muttered, stepping back as the air thickened around me. A dull thud reverberated behind me, making me spin around, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The hum morphed into a low growl, and from the corner of my eye, shadows moved in a way that made my skin crawl. I could barely breathe, I was being watched. Suddenly, the whispers converged into one desperate plea, clear and powerful: help us. I stumbled backward, heart pounding in my chest. I had unleashed something, and now I was trapped in its snare. Then, out of the corner of the room, I noticed a flickering light. My stomach dropped. Someone or something was there with me. Panic surged as I realized I wasn't alone in the basement. The shadows twisted, coalescing into a shape. I needed to escape. I turned to run, but the darkness closed in, and my flashlight went out. Help us! Echoed in my ears one last time, just before everything went black. I woke up with a jolt, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. The darkness enveloped me, but I could still feel the cold floor beneath my hands. Confusion washed over me. Had I just blacked out? I fumbled for the flashlight, my fingers trembling. A deep breath steadied me as I flicked it back on. The beam cut through the dimness. I scanned the room and found more than I expected. The gurney loomed closer than before, but what startled me was the small group of old hospital tapes scattered around it. My breath hitched. What if they were recordings of the people who once occupied this space? What if Daniel Hayes' name meant something more? I picked one up, the plastic case crumbling slightly in my grip. The label had faded, but I could make out Patient 17, Daniel Hayes. I swallowed hard. Connecting my field of research with a possible history felt like stepping into quicksand. I glanced back at the shadows, heart racing at the thought of it all. "Help us!" The same desperate plea hung in the air. The voice, this time, felt closer, almost buzzing in my ears. Was it my imagination, or was something truly here with me? I swept the flashlight in the direction it seemed to come from, but nothing was visible, just the same old equipment standing guard over the secrets of the basement. Suddenly, the ground creaked beneath me, breaking the stillness. I turned quickly, nearly dropping the flashlight. My instincts screamed for me to run, but my feet felt glued to the spot. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. It shimmered like a mirage, and I blinked, expecting it to disappear, but it remained. A woman, her face obscured, floated a few feet away. I could just make out the outline of her coat, reminiscent of hospital scrubs, and her outstretched hand pointed towards the gurney. "Help us," she repeated, voice trembling. It was clear she wanted something from me. "Who are you?" I asked, bewildered. I felt an urge to approach her, but fear kept me rooted. My mind raced. Was this another hallucination? A trick of the light? As I spoke, my voice echoed against the basement walls, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. Her face changed. I could discern pain, sorrow, and urgency etched in her features, and before I could ask anything more, she lunged toward me, mouth open in a silent scream. Panic surged again, and I swung my flashlight wildly, desperate to ward off whatever this was. The beam caught her figure, and for the briefest moment, I saw her clearly. A name tag hung prominently from her scrubs, Nurse Rachel, it read. The recognition jolted me, but any question I might have had vanished as she dissolved into mist, leaving behind only a chill that crept down my spine. I felt a strong pull to the gurney, nearly against my will. It was as if something inside it was calling to me. Curiosity overcame my fear, and I stepped closer, my pulse racing. What was I about to uncover? But just then, the door to the basement slammed shut. The resounding bang echoed through the stifling silence, and my heart sank. I wasn't just trapped in the basement, I was locked in with whatever had been unleashed. I took a step back, the flashlight trembling in my hand. My heart raced faster now. The air felt heavier, weightier, as if the shadows themselves were holding their breath. It was hard to think. I was truly trapped, and I was losing my grip on reality. I turned towards the door instinctively, but it felt miles away. My mind screamed at me to find an escape, yet my curiosity about the gurney only grew stronger. I steeled myself. "I have to see," I whispered, more to reassure myself than anything. I approached the gurney slowly, trying to ignore the chill that hung in the air. The clear plastic cover was slightly askew, revealing what seemed like medical tools inside. My eyes widened as I realized the gravity of what could be lurking there. Those instruments could belong to anyone, any patient, any memory lost. Perhaps even Nurse Rachel had once witnessed their use. I forced myself closer. That's when I saw it, a folder wedged beneath the gurney. It was dusty, old, and I felt an odd sense of urgency to pull it out. My fingers grasped at the frayed edges, and I tugged it free. As I did, a whisper slithered by my ear. "Help us!" I froze, the weight of the words sinking in. I looked around, half expecting Nurse Rachel to appear again, but the basement remained silent. I ripped open the folder, my breath quickening. Inside, I found hospital records, patient details, treatment logs. My eyes landed on a particular sheet. The name jumped out, Daniel Hayes. I read through the lines, my heart racing as I scanned the brief accounts of his condition. Severe trauma. Frequent episodes of psychosis. Required restraint. Each word felt heavier than the last, a darkness that weighed down the air around me. As I read, a shiver ran up my spine. Other names accompanied his. Each entry had a risk factor. I struggled to absorb it all. Why were these records hidden here? Had someone wanted to keep the past buried? I looked again to the shadows, my pulse quickening. Then I heard it again, more voices, but this time they were layered, echoing off the walls. Help us, let us go, the whispers swirled around me, growing louder, more desperate. They were begging, calling. I gripped the folder tightly, panic spiraling. My instincts screamed at me to flee, yet I was rooted to the spot. Just as I began to back away, the gurney shifted slightly beneath my touch. I jumped back, the flashlight flickered and dimmed. Then everything went dark. Total darkness enveloped me, and I couldn't see anything. The whispers morphed into a cacophony, rising in a frenzied pitch of anguish. My breath quickened, and I raised the flashlight just as it flickered back to life. The beam washed over the room, but I wasn't alone anymore. Shapes started to form in the shadows. I squinted, fear rising like bile. There were figures all around the edges, trapped, wanting to break free. I stumbled backward against the gurney, shaking my head. Help us! They cried again, but this time, it was no longer a mere whisper. I was about to find out just how far down this rabbit hole went. I stumbled back, the gurney digging into my back. The light flickered again, illuminating the twisted, desperate faces surrounding me. Panic clawed at my throat as I fought the urge to scream. I pressed the flashlight against my chest, trying to steady my shaking hands. Who are you? I managed to croak, but the figures only continued to wail, their voices blending into an agonizing chorus of despair. Each plea felt like a brand on my conscience. I searched for an exit, realizing I had to leave, had to get out of there. But where was the door? In a desperate attempt to clear my mind, I stepped forward, shining the light toward the figures. They recoiled, faces twisting in fear, their features flickering like a bad signal. No matter how hard I tried to focus, they were too fragmented, too broken. Daniel, I shouted suddenly, the name ringing out over the chaos. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe I hoped for some clarity, for an answer buried among the whispers. It was a name that clung to my memory from the folder, a thread I thought would lead me somewhere. The figures paused, their cries stilled, and then they began to chant again, Daniel Hayes. We need him. Save him. It was almost synchronized, as if they were reliving some shared tragedy. My heart raced, the air around me felt electric, thick with despair. Where is he? I shouted, the question emerging from a mixture of fear and curiosity. The flashlight flickered once more before casting a sudden illumination through the basement. In that moment, I saw it, a wall slightly ajar, a small door hidden among old cabinets and crates. Was that my exit or another trap? Before I could decide, a hand reached out from the shadows, thin and trembling. Please, it croaked. Before it's too late, I recoiled, taking another step back, but the gurney caught my heel. I stumbled, half falling against the cold metal. I want to help, but my voice trembled, mixing with the frantic cries that echoed around me. They won't let you, another figure hissed, its voice sharper than the rest. They keep us here. The weight of the revelation sank in, twisting in my gut. I glanced nervously at the door. Was there really something they wanted me to find? Or was it them I needed to escape from? The whispers became frantic. Help us. Find Daniel. Stop them. I felt myself teetering on the edge of insanity, caught between the urge to aid the pleading souls and the unresolved dread that seeped into my bones. Why should I trust you? I shouted, desperate for clarity. What do you mean they? I needed answers, my mind raced through the possibilities, but only screams answered me. My flashlight dimmed again, and I felt the shadows press closer, tightening around me like a screaming blanket. You already know, they insisted, voices stitching together in a tapestry of fear. You just have to look inside. The pressure mounted in my chest as I considered the door. I knew time was running out. I had to make a choice. And then, just as I steeled myself to bolt, the wall behind me cracked open, revealing a darkened corridor. The voices swelled into a chaotic crescendo, urging me forward. My heart pounded in response, pushing me toward that ominous opening. I took a deep breath. It was time to confront whatever lay ahead, or be pulled under forever. I stepped into the corridor, the darkness wrapping around me like a heavy cloak. The air felt cooler, and I noticed a stale odor that sent a shiver crawling up my spine. The flickering flashlight illuminated just enough to catch glimpses of peeling paint and old, rusted machinery lining the walls. Each step echoed, a hollow sound against the void that stretched before me. "Daniel," I whispered, the name reverberating softly against the darkness. Why was I calling for him? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being guided, pulled in by forces beyond my understanding. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but there was something magnetizing about the way the voices swirled in my mind. As I moved deeper into the corridor, the cries transformed into fragmented sentences. "He's lost in the shadows, trust no one," they faded in and out like a radio tuning into static. I had to push through, even if each whisper gnawed at my fear. Then, to my shock, I stumbled upon a small room off the corridor. It was barely more than a closet, but the door stood ajar, and light flickered inside. I approached cautiously, heart thrumming in sheer terror. I peeked in, expecting the worst. Inside was a single chair, bolted to the floor, and around it were scraps of paper strewn like fallen leaves. The surface was lined with strange symbols and scribbles that made no sense. There was an aura of dread in that little space. I noticed a large, dusty mirror propped against the wall, reflecting the faint light bulb above. "Daniel," the voices pleaded again, more urgent this time. I stepped inside, heart racing. "What happened to you?" I wanted to scream but felt powerless. My flashlight fell on a paper clipped to the chair. It was a report, detailing Daniel Hayes' last known whereabouts, a list of places he had frequented before his disappearance combined with scrawled emergency contacts. But as I reached for it, a sharp chill swept through the room. The lights flickered violently before plunging into darkness. I gasped, my pulse quickening. I was alone, swallowed by shadows. Panic rose in my throat like bile. I just want to help." I stammered. Then I heard a whisper right beside me, dark and cold. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. A figure emerged from the shadows, face shrouded but eyes glimmering like smoldering embers. "You need to leave now." He wouldn't stop until, but the figure dissolved into the air, leaving a lingering sense of dread behind. The last words echoed in my mind, and I felt a surge of adrenaline that propelled me back into the corridor. "Find Daniel," the voices shouted, all at once. "Stop them." In that moment, everything clicked. I understood that them was not just the broken souls around me. There was something more sinister at play. I needed to escape, but the voices and dark corridor loomed larger than ever. Running was my only option, but where? I took off blindly down the hallway, the oppressive darkness racing behind me, urging me on. The air felt thick, and suddenly, the cries grew louder, wrapping around me, pulling me back toward the source of their torment. And then, a piercing scream cut through the chaos. I froze, a cold wave of dread crashing over me. Now, I realized, I had no idea what I was truly up against. The fight to save Daniel was about to become even more dangerous. I bolted down the corridor, lungs burning, desperately searching for stability in the chaos. Every time I thought I had found my footing, the shadows seemed to reach for me, urging me back. I stumbled, nearly losing my grip on the flashlight before redirecting it towards the nearest exit sign. "Daniel!" I shouted, hoping my voice would cut through the frenzy. I was not sure if I was still alone in this forsaken place. And then, as if in response, I heard the whispers again, soft at first, then louder, swelling in my chest. "Help us, help him," my heart raced. I couldn't discern if the voices were urging me forward or trying to lead me into a trap. I had to find a way out now. I pushed onward, the darkness pressing in on me as I turned down a side passage, praying it would lead to another exit or maybe a way back to that room. Before I could take more than a few steps, I found myself face to face with an old hospital room, its door ajar. The unmistakable odor of antiseptic hit me, mixing oddly with the stale air of the corridor. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The room was dim and sterile, but I could see a flickering light above, casting eerie shadows across the minimalist furnishings. In the corner was an empty bed, the sheets pulled tight. On the nearby wall hung a bulletin board cluttered with old medical notices, and my breath hitched a picture of Daniel. Missing, it read simply beneath a bland photo that no longer resembled the friend I used to know. Below it, someone had scrawled, "He is here," in a shaky hand. Fear rose within me, threatening to suffocate. Then, I noticed a figure leaning against the window, shrouded in darkness. My heart dropped as I recognized the silhouette. "Daniel?" I called out cautiously. The figure turned but remained unmoved, a shadow in the dim light. "Help me," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. It was him. How could it be? He looked the same yet different, hollowed, like a ghost, his features obscured by sorrow. I stepped closer, but something held me back. "Don't touch him," the voice shouted suddenly, echoing from the corner of the room. I whirled around to see an old nurse in tattered scrubs, her hair wild as if electrified. "He is not what he seems. You must leave." Before I could react, the lights flickered again. The room changed, the comforting smell of antiseptic twisted into something foul, a rancid stench that clawed at my throat. Shadows danced around the walls, and the temperature dropped sharply. "Please, help him," Daniel's voice pleaded again, now laced with desperation. But the nurse shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand. It's a trap. They want to take your soul too." Panic surged within me, soaking my senses. What was happening? I turned to the nurse and saw the grin stretching across her face, the kind that said she knew something I didn't. The air thickened as whispers intensified around us. Then, everything went dark. In the enveloping silence, the weight of shadows bore down on me. I felt the nurse's hand grip my wrist tightly, pulling me toward the door. "Run!" she hissed, pushing me back into the corridor. Stumbling back, I gasped for breath. Whatever had happened in that room wasn't over. I was closer to the truth, but the danger was now palpable, as if the very darkness had come alive. I felt a presence lurking behind me, ready to pounce. What had I really stumbled into? I had to find out, but first, I had to survive. I sprinted down the corridor, the flickering lights overhead casting long, erratic shadows that seemed to reach for me. My heart pounded in my chest like a frantic warning bell. The whispers had transformed into an urgent cacophony, echoing along the walls, overwhelming my senses. "Help us. Find him. He won't let you go." I had to focus. Each step led me further from the old hospital room and deeper into the unknown, but the pull to understand what was happening surged within me. I glanced back, half expecting to see Daniel's shadow following, but found only darkness closing in behind me. Whatever lurked in this place was not content to let me leave. Up ahead, I spotted an exit sign flickering weakly. "Hope," I whispered to myself, pushing every ounce of energy into my legs. My body felt heavier with each stride, but the promise of freedom pushed me forward. As I approached the exit door, the whispers grew frantic and loud, almost deafening. "Help us!" they cried, voices merging into an anguished scream. "We're trapped. You need to listen." I hesitated, the door almost within reach, my hand trembling on the handle. But a part of me wanted to stay, wanted to understand, to help those voices that had become increasingly familiar. "Why can't you let me go?" I shouted to the shadows that surrounded me, half pleading, half defiant. Suddenly, a figure burst forth from the darkness. A nurse, she looked disheveled and frantic, eyes wide with fear. "You have to leave," she shouted. "They'll pull you in. You don't belong here." I paused, caught between the door and the vision of the others' lost souls calling for help. "But Daniel is gone," the nurse cut in, her voice a mixture of sorrow and anger. "Don't listen to him. He's not the boy you remember, he's a vessel now." The lights above me started to flicker madly, and the whispers followed suit, swelling into a chaotic blend of frustrations and appeals. The weight of their pain settled in my chest. "No." I stepped back, gripping my flashlight tighter, its beam flickering dangerously. "What do you want from me?" "You're the only one alive," the nurse said, urgency draping her words. "If you don't get out now, the darkness will take you just like it took Daniel and the others. Run." Before I could protest, she turned, heading back into the darkness, her form swallowed whole. I stood at the precipice between choice and consequence. But the mounting dread became unbearable. I could feel the souls around me coiling tighter, demanding release. With a deep breath, I ripped the door open, the fluorescent light spilling into the space. I ran, every instinct pushing me toward the blinding freedom outside. The exit beckoned, a promise of safety, but the growing chorus of cries chased me, hinting at truths I could never grasp. I burst through the door, tumbling into the cool night air. My lungs expanded greedily, filling with the scent of freedom. I glanced back at the building, its facade looming ominously in the dusk. Had I really left everything behind? Were those voices still trapped? As I hurried to my car, uncertainty twisted in my gut. What had happened to Daniel? I wanted to scream. I remembered the hospital records, the voices urging me to help. Had I abandoned them? Still shaken, I turned the engine over and watched as the flickering lights of the hospital gradually faded into the distance. I would never truly escape this ambiguity, a part of me would always wonder. Did that darkness exist beyond the walls? Were the whispers real? I drove into the night, heart heavy with questions unanswered, haunted by memories that would never fade. Sometimes, I still think about that hospital, the shadows that lingered and the souls that reached for me. I wish I could forget, but some things are seared deep within. In the end, I know I took a piece of that darkness with me, but at least I was alive.